Welcome to David and David on Real Estate. Join us as we explore the ins and outs of the real estate market.
Good morning and welcome to the David and David on Real Estate podcast. And today is a milestone episode. David Korman, what episode are we on?
It's very excited to be here today. This is episode 60, the big 60. And time has flown. It seems like we did them all in the last week somehow.
It really does. I can't believe it. Like 60 episodes is great. A lot of great topics, a lot of great memories. And today we have a very special episode in mind for you guys, because what we're going to do today is we're going to go through all the episodes that we've recorded, and we're going to summarize all the episodes and talk about some of the key points. And I know that a lot of people are tuning in. We have a lot of new listeners, and I get questions all the time. You know, what episode should I start? What episode should I listen to first? So today we're going to do a quick summary. We're going to give everybody a little bit of an intro to all the episodes, just so you can go back and you can listen to some of them. David, I went through a list earlier today, and I was looking at some of the topics, and boy, has the market really changed from the first time we did the first episode, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, it really has. And I was trying to figure out exactly what date. I didn't have it marked down what date we started. I think it was April 14, 2021. Did you take a look? I think that was the first time we recorded one of these. So it's all like a year and a half, well, almost a year and a half already in the making. And, you know, there's been so many changes in the market and things that we've discussed since then. But for those, you know, that aren't as familiar maybe with these podcasts, there's one thing that I know. I think we've been really true to the way we set this up from day one. You know, 60 episodes later, we wanted to talk about the market and market conditions, and you know, and the real estate industry, and the whole idea was to try and raise the bar. It wasn't just to promote me or you or my firm or your firm. You know, that'll happen inevitably anyways, but that wasn't the intent. It's to be able to have these topics and have these discussions that hopefully does reach other people. So there is some influence that we can make to some extent on the market to make people better and to make them pay attention to something. Not that we have all the answers, but we have some questions and some thought stuff. So, and the other part that I think we've been true to too is that we also wanted to talk about how certain things affect our businesses as private business owners. And we try and get the conversation to that when it's the two of us or with the guests, and have some conversation about that as well. And I think we've been pretty true to that through 60 episodes.
We have been. So should we jump into it, David?
Wait, I got to get ready.
I like it.
Yeah.
You know this is going to go viral online now.
Yeah, I knew what I was doing when I put this on. When you get to my age, you find stuff around your house because you've celebrated birthdays and stuff like that. But anyways, I thought this, you know, I've had other hats and shirts along the way. And anyways, this 60 episodes is nothing to sneeze at.
The big 60 tiara, for those of everybody listening and not watching, that's what David Korman just put on his head, and I'm very jealous because I didn't get one.
Well, if I had to, I would have sent you one, but I just found this morning, so not bad, eh? Not bad.
It looks great on you.
Yeah.
So back in April of 2021, one of the first episodes we recorded, episode number 1, buyers and multiple offers. And I think it was a very timely episode, David, because I remember April of 2021, every transaction that was selling in multiples, no conditions. Buyers were bringing their deposit checks with the offer presentations, and it was a complete and utter seller's market.
Yeah, and we were in that market for quite a period of time, but that was easily topic number 1 at the time, right? How do you deal with it? You know, like lots of pressure on agents back then, running around, you know, dragging people from to do offer to offer, you know, knowing you're going to lose on a bunch of them. Like it was a tough time, you know, in hindsight. In some ways, the agent's job was easier because there wasn't a lot of negotiation of the agreement, purchase and sale It was mostly price, deposit, closing date, and things were focused on that. But there was a lot of running around with clients and trying to manage their expectations and driving prices up and making properties that should have been affordable unaffordable for clients. So it was an interesting time, and that was and it was easily the first topic for us to discuss.
It really was. David, what advice would you give to realtors that are new to the industry? What can they take away from watching an episode like that today?
Well, sometimes you have to know history and understand history to be able to deal with what current market conditions are. Okay, because they're going to be dealing with clients, potential buyers who have been in the wings waiting to buy, and maybe they were looking to buy back then, and maybe they couldn't handle that market. They didn't want to get into that type of market, or they weren't quite ready, but they're sort of used to those type of discussions and reading about those experiences and their friends' experiences and things like that. And now they're coming to the market in a totally different type of market. So you have to understand the history in order to explain that to your clients and say, yeah, this is how we did things. Or maybe they're selling right now. It's the same thing. Oh, we're selling, we're going to get multiple offers, and then the price will get driven up, and then we're going to take the best offer. Well, no, you have to understand the history of what the market was in order to be able to explain the current market conditions and the differences. Okay, so strategies that were used in April 2021 are no longer valid, but you still have to understand what was going on in order to be able to adjust and find new strategies for today.
Absolutely. Let's jump into episode 2. So in episode 2, we talked about buyer issues when dealing with multiple offers.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, you came up with a whole bunch of good points in that one. Not you didn't in other shows, but in that one in particular, because we were focused more on buyers. And look, a buyer today is different than a buyer in April 2021. That's no question. And everybody's got to make adjustments. So there was a lot of frustration then, a lot of angst, but you have different frustrations now, different angst right now. So, again, it's important to go back and for these things to understand some of the strategies that were used then and see how you have to adjust it.
Yeah, one of the topics that we really talked about is this idea of buyer bad faith, right? And I mean, that is something that will continue and still stands today, and it's something that everybody has to be really vigilant about. And that's the idea that when you submit an offer that's conditional, buyer has to act in good faith to further and close the transaction. So for example, if you have a home inspection condition in an offer and the buyer sends a mutual release, but the home inspection was never performed, that's an example of buyer bad faith, because they actually didn't go through the steps to further and close the transaction. They got cold feet, they changed their mind. That would be an example of a buyer of bad faith, where in that scenario, the seller would actually have the right to hold the buyer's deposit because they weren't acting in good faith. So that's a great episode for people to watch, to really understand what the obligations are of a buyer to close the transaction, to further the deal, and to act in good faith at all times.
Yeah, and the same principle holds true regardless of the condition. A condition on a status certificate review and a condo, condition on financing. You have to take some reasonable steps to try and satisfy the condition. You can't just use it as an escape clause to get out of a deal. That's not, and that's really important in today's market, because there are real negotiations of conditions back on offers today. Like there weren't in that multi-offer scenario as much. We weren't seeing conditions, but now we are. Now agents have to be negotiating conditions. They have to know how to draft the condition properly, put it in, set reasonable timeframes, and then they've got to take steps to try and satisfy those conditions, because they could be put to the test.
Absolutely. Podcast number 3, what happens when a transaction does not close? One of my favorite topics, because there's so much misconceptions, especially around not dropping off the deposit. Is the deal automatically dead?
Well, I would tell anybody, watch podcast number 3, but also watch the one we just recently did. I think it was a couple weeks ago with Sarah Erskine, litigation lawyer, where we really got in depth on those issues. And again, this is a year plus later, and she's dealing with these from a litigation standpoint on this. But the bottom line is, and Sarah confirmed it to us, that, if you're supposed to deliver a deposit within 24 hours and you don't, that doesn't give you an out on the transaction. You have a binding contract when you sign a contract. The first term of your contract was to deliver the deposit by a certain time. And if you fail to do that, you're in breach of the contract and can be held liable for damages. So even though you haven't put the money up, you can still be sued for that money and for damages. So, it's amazing. Like, that was podcast 3, but you got to couple that with, I'm not sure which one it was. It was 57 or 58 or something. Look it up, Sarah Erskine, and it's a great combination.
Absolutely. Podcast number 4 is a continuation of podcast number 3. So again, listen to podcast 3, 4, and then, David Korman has a point. Sarah Ernstine really adds a lot of layers to that, because it's the litigation factor of what happens afterwards if you cannot remedy all the breaches and the transaction doesn't close and it goes to litigation. Podcast number 5 is buying a property in this market a good idea? And that was a really great podcast, because it kind of talked about the investment side of real estate. And I know we did a little bit of number analysis. We talked about property fundamentals like location, buying and holding real estate over long term. We talked about certain pockets, and that certain pockets are always in demand and not really affected when prices go down. And we're seeing that today. There's certain pockets in Toronto, certain pockets in Mississauga, certain pockets in Oakville that are so in demand. People will pay any price to live on those streets.
Yeah, and I guess I should make the point too, when we did these early podcasts, we generally started off with a market analysis, market discussion. You always did a market update for us. So anybody going back now, they may not want to sit through the first 10 minutes of that. It might not be as relevant, or just listen a minute or two of it, because just to get an idea of what the market was at the time. But you can always skip forward to the other parts of the discussion too, beyond the market analysis, which may not be as relevant. But still important issues. Your points on investing and things like that, and the difference between owning a home because it's your home, and owning and other opportunities to invest in real estate are important issues to address too.
Yeah. And we were spot on in that episode. I encouraged everybody to go out and buy real estate. And had you purchased real estate in May of 2021, today, you would have, even with the market downshift that we're seeing, you still would have been up about 20 to 30%. So, if you followed our advice, you made a lot of money. Pays to listen to the David and David on Real Estate. Podcast number 6 and 7 is how sports have shaped our respective businesses. And David, I know we can talk about these 2 topics forever, but you and I have been heavily involved in sports, and it's the repetition and the consistency of training, of really putting in the work and the effort, to really learning, to really mastering, to really going out there and really investing in yourself. And you see the results. You see, I play table tennis and tennis in my life, and the more I practiced, the better I got. And it got to the point where I practiced, 3 to 4 hours a day playing table tennis. I was an extremely good, and still am a pretty good table tennis player. I don't play anymore. I don't have the time for it. I wish I did. I play a lot more tennis than I play table tennis these days. But, there is such a big lesson, such a big correlation between doing well in sports and doing well in business.
Well, I've been trying for over a year to get somebody to corroborate your story about how good you are in table tennis, and so far I haven't found anybody. So I have to just go on your word for it for the time being. And the same thing with stories that I could tell about what, the athlete that I once was. No one will believe it right now. I think I may have told the story of my kids laughing at me, seeing me play basketball about 10 years ago after hearing stories about how I used to be able to play basketball. And then they watch me in my 50s playing a tournament against 25 and 30-year-olds and just get creamed. And they go, really? You played basketball when you grew up? But still, we were both very influenced, and still are, by sports, by our own athletics and training and sports, and also what we watch. And there's a lot to learn from sports. A lot of, it's how to be a team player, leadership, things like that. I think that's what a lot of our discussion was for a few episodes that came through there. And I know in there we also had an example of a bad faith deposit story, and things went wrong, and I think we updated the following episode. So there was also some interesting material in there as well for anybody that wants to go back and take a look.
Absolutely. Episode podcast number 8 and 9 was how mentors have shaped our respective businesses.
Yeah, and some of that came out of the sports discussion too, because some of the mentors that we both experienced were people that were involved in our sports, our coaches and people that we trained with and things like that. And then that led into other business type of relationships and people that we look up to, and personal relationships, that people that mentor us. And not only do you improve as a person by taking the benefit of the mentorship, but it also trains you how to mentor others and how to try and help others. And I really enjoyed the discussion in those episodes.
Absolutely. I encourage all our viewers to go back and, those 4 episodes, how sports have shaped our respective businesses and how mentors have shaped our respective businesses. I can't stress enough how important those episodes are, because every day, we lean on people, and we surround ourselves with people that help us improve our business, help us improve our daily lives. We had my boxing coach, with Fraser, on an episode as well. And these are just extremely influential people that, will help get you in the right mindset, will help you elevate your business to the next level. And you have to surround yourself with people that will do that for you in your business and in your personal lives.
Yeah, for sure. These are life lessons that you learn at a young age, and you don't even know you're learning them and how to apply them, because at the immediate time when they're being taught, you're applying them to one particular thing that you're doing at the time. And it's amazing how you draw on those things throughout your lifetime.
Yeah, you don't even realize it, but life is tough, David. Let's be honest, life is tough, and sometimes it can get very tough. And to have those people that you can lean on outside of your business sometimes is also very important. It could be a big difference maker.
Yeah, and look, in the business world, markets change, markets shift, the economy shifts. There's always a new challenge. There's always adjustments that have to be made. And you start learning that when you're a relatively young person. How do you deal with things in the middle? And sports is no different. You got a game plan, whether you're playing table tennis or you're playing basketball or hockey, or name the sport. And you come up with a game plan before you start, and all of a sudden the other side is doing some things that maybe you didn't expect, or maybe they're doing it better than you expected. And it's okay, you call a timeout, you have a huddle, the coach comes up with a new plan. We're going to make an adjustment. We're going to do something a little bit different. And then you come back, and it's no different in the business world. Like, the economy changes. There's always different market conditions. We're always making adjustments. So you can't sit back and say, well, I'm going to wait until this wave passes. You got to be in the middle of it and making adjustments as you go. So these are the type of discussions I think we have that helps us as small business owners.
100%. Podcast number 10, seller remedies if buyer is in breach of contract.
Yeah, this one was a good one. We focused on things like anticipatory breach, when the buyer's saying, sorry, I know I'm not going to get my financing. I don't have a commitment. I can't close on time. And then what do you do as a seller? What are your options? What are your remedies? How do you protect your rights? So we go through that type of discussion from a seller's point of view when they're telling you, before closing, it could be a week before closing or a few days before closing, we're not going to be able to close on time. What are your rights? Because you have to understand your rights before you decide what to do. It doesn't mean you're always going to choose to just stand on your legal principles. Sometimes you have to understand it. You may have to reserve your rights to do it, but then sometimes you have to focus on, okay, well, is there a way to still get this done? And that's part of the discussion. I think that's really important for anybody that's a real estate agent, that's a lawyer out there. It's not just, okay, oh, they're in breach, great, let's just keep their deposit and move on. No, sometimes you still want to work with those people. And I think in today's market, that's a really important thing. You don't want to let anybody go if someone's really interested in your property. You have to find a way to still close a transaction if possible, even if you're the innocent party and the other side is in breach. So there was some good discussion back then, and then we've had some more recent discussion on that type of topic lately as well.
Yeah, no, and I think this episode is really important, especially in today's market, because we're seeing a lot of changes happening to appraisals, to we're seeing a lot of difficult situations occurring when closings happen. So there's a lot of really good information in this episode, like important questions to ask when buyer is considering an extension. When the seller is considering an extension asked by the buyer, what expenses can the seller ask buyer to pay if they cannot close? Is listing commission owed when a property does not close? So lots of really, really good information. And I think this episode is extremely relevant and valid in today's market as well.
It is, and anybody listening to it, again, I'm repeating myself, but you have to understand the general principles. So we did this episode about a year ago, and at that time, if someone was in breach, it was sort of easier to say, okay, they're in breach, we might keep their deposit, we'll reserve their rights because we're just going to put on the market, sell to somebody else because the market was active. Today, someone's in breach, you say, well, is there a way we can still work with them? Maybe it makes sense to take a bit of a haircut and renegotiate something, or give them extension, give them some time, because you don't know when that next buyer's coming along. So you have to understand the legal principles, but the way we react to those principles a year ago are a little different than what our strategies would be today.
100%. You would take a completely different position knowing that the market has shifted this today, whereas before, because the market was still moving upwards, you would take a completely different position as well. So understanding what the market is and what the market's doing is fundamentally important. And that's where, the relationship that our two offices have and the communication is vitally important as well.
Yeah, it's not something a seller ever wants to hear. Like, I sold it for $1 million, buyer can't close. If I go back to the market back a year ago, you might sell it for more than $1 million, or you might get your $1 million still. Today's market, you're probably, if you sold it 2 months ago and now they can't close, you're probably going to get less than $1 million. So now your choice is, if I'm going to take a bit of a haircut, do I want to do that with the existing buyer, reduce my price a little bit, or give them more time to close? Because if I don't, I got to put it back on the market. I'll probably sell it for less money. I still have the right to have a lawsuit and try and collect that, but is that really what I want to do? Right? And you don't know if you're going to collect it. So it's important to understand all these principles and the market at the same time.
Yeah, the next two episodes that we recorded were on the 2021 federal election and how that election is going to impact housing.
Yeah, and I think it did. Well, it obviously did. And every election affects the housing market, whether it's a federal election or a provincial election. So, we try and be balanced in our approach and not take one side or the other. And I think we both were talking about, like, the choices weren't great at the time. There was problems on both sides. Like, pick your poison. And it's terrible going into an election when you don't have confidence in what they're telling you and what they're really going to do. So anyway, we try and do a little bit of like the Fox News and the CNN news at the same time, give both viewpoints.
Yes, but I mean, you mentioned it, and I like this perspective, and I agree with this, that Canadians, my majority, most of the time get it correct, right? And I mean, we ended up with a minority government, which, anyways, I mean, let's not get into that at this point, but because we'll spend a whole episode talking about this. But two great episodes I would encourage people to listen to. Podcast number 11, rental items.
Yeah, here we dug down a little bit on some of the issues that come up with, what's included, what's not included, what's a chattel, what's a fixture, is the hot water tank a rental, things like that, because those things, they seem relatively minor in the big scheme of a transaction, but those are the type of things that screw up a transaction a lot of times because they're not described properly, or there isn't enough investigation done before an offer is submitted to find out what the story is with those things. And there's horror stories about, buyers having to assume, rent, lease to own contracts that are pretty onerous. So anyways, that's sort of where that discussion was focused.
Yeah, and really important topic. I think we're seeing more and more rental items come up in new homes and in condominiums. A lot of these are registered as encumbrances on title, and listing agents have to take effort and make sure that they really dig in and find out what the rental items are. And buyer agents have to be very careful, because a lot of these contracts are expensive to discharge and to buy out and to assume. So there's a lot of contentious issues surrounding rental items, and I think this was a very important episode.
Yeah, and look, you always want to look good in front of your clients as a real estate agent, because that's what's going to ultimately get you the referrals down the road, right? And when you sign an agreement and these items aren't addressed properly, and all of a sudden just before closing these items come up, and it was like I relied on you as my agent to look into this and to make sure that I wasn't assuming anything I didn't have to assume. So you're going to blow a client really fast if you don't pay attention to something that seems minor, but it's really important to do your homework and be prepared. And as a listing agent, you should be very upfront with this too. Okay, because you should be disclosing exactly what the situation is. So anybody that's going to buy the property is going to have clear information about whether it's a rental or it's a lease to own.
Absolutely. Great episode. Would encourage everybody to listen to it. Very relevant in all times. Podcast number 12, accuracy of the MLS listing information.
Yeah, and this ties in a little bit what we were just talking about, because some of the stuff that should be listed properly is, chattels and what's included, what's not included, or whether there's, rent to own and that type of thing. Disclosure is really important. So take the time, make sure you're accurate in your listing. You're not making any rep or warranty that you can't live up to down the road. Now, on the other hand, part of the discussion is also that what's in an MLS agreement isn't part of the agreement of purchase and sale. It's not binding on the parties. Okay, that's just it's putting an advertisement out there for you to come look at, and then they make an offer, and then there's a binding contract. So unless the MLS listing is attached as a schedule to the agreement of purchase and sale, it's not really going to be binding on a seller. But you still have to be careful that you're not misrepresenting the property in any shape or form.
Yeah, and for the real estate side, the data integrity on a listing is very important. We want people to be able to rely on the information, and we want the information to be as accurate as possible, so the public trusts the information they see on realtor.ca, and so the realtors can really rely on the information that's listed on the MLS data sheet. I think that adds to the professionalism and the respect and trust that's garnished in the industry. So I know that the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board does a great job in ensuring and policing the data integrity on the MLS system. And I think we each have a part as realtors to make sure that when we're listing a property, that we provide accurate information. But from a buyer's point of view, we cannot solely rely on that information. Buyers have to do their own due diligence and verify all the information. So there is a cross-check between the information that's inputted and the information that the buyer has to rely on. So when you are representing a buyer, make sure that you spend a little bit of time and don't solely rely on the information that's provided, but it's your job as the co-op agent to protect your buyer. You have fiduciary duties. You have to protect your buyer every step of the way and verify the data information.
Yeah, and if something is in the MLS that you think is really significant and important to your buyer, then you've got to take that information out of the MLS and incorporate it into your agreement of purchase and sale. If you have to turn it into a specific rep and warranty of the seller, then you have to put that in your agreement of purchase and sale. And we get asked all the time with, after closing, we thought that this and this was supposed to happen, and it was in the MLS and it's not there. And we came to the house, it's not. Well, if it was that important to you, it's incumbent upon you as the buyer to get that term into your agreement of purchase and sale. Okay, because otherwise you're not going to be able to go after a seller. You had an opportunity to review the house. You may have already had an opportunity to inspect the house prior to closing. And if it was that important, it should have been put into your agreement of purchase and sale. And if not, you're out of luck.
Correct. Episode or podcast number 13, everything you need to know about easements and encroachments.
Yeah, now some of this gets a little dry sometimes when we get into those topics, but we're asked these questions all the time, mutual rights of way, mutual driveways, the way houses are so close to each other. Do I have a right to put up a ladder on my neighbor's property in order to fix my eaves trough? Things like that, and we get into the whole discussion of different types of easements, different types of rights of way, what happens to encroachment on neighbor's property, of certain, whether it's your deck or your garage or your shed or some landscaping or things like that. So I think an interesting podcast and an interesting one to just know that's there. So if you have an issue, you can draw on it and watch it at that point in time. We wanted to get this in the library, so it's there as a resource.
Absolutely. Very important topic, because we're dealing with land all the time, and there are a lot of issues when it comes to land, right? And I think the idea here for realtors to really be aware of is that lawyers will search title for properties, but that buyers have to accept title with some minor title issues, like if there's an easement for a hydro company or there's an easement for a sewer or something of that nature on the property, buyers still have to are obligated to close the transactions. And I think the more work a realtor does at the front end and explains that to a buyer, the more successful the transaction will be in the long run.
Yeah, no, great point. And for minor easements for utility type purposes, that's incorporated right into the printed form of agreement of purchase and sale, that the buyer has to accept title subject to those type of easements. But then there's other easements and rights of ways that are just created by parties, but between neighbors, and you see a lot of this. I know you've been dealing a lot in cottage country and rural properties, and our offices do a lot of that. And those issues become really paramount when you get up into cottage country with rights of ways and private roads and who's going to maintain them and what's your right to go on them, and you need that as access to your cottage property. And so things like that. So it's an important topic, and it's important for people to know that it's there and they can draw on it as a resource when you have an issue.
Podcast 14, everything you need to know about condominium status certificates.
Yeah. Well, the first thing you need to know as a realtor is, do not sign an agreement of purchase and sale. Do not let your client sign an offer to buy a condo without having a clause in there that it's conditional on reviewing a status certificate. So don't make that mistake, first of all. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we go into discussion of what we're actually looking for and why it's so significant that we review these status certificates. So, another important one, and if a good one to draw on as a resource as well. So you know what the issues are that we're actually looking for when we review these things, because you as an agent should be reviewing them too at a certain level, and then us as lawyers are always reviewing them to look for certain issues and make sure the agent knows about it, make sure the client knows about it, then they can make an informed decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're reviewing them as an agent, please don't stop there. Make sure a professional reviews and a professional lawyer reviews the status certificate, because it's really important. It's a very lengthy document. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of moving parts, and it's very important that two sets of eyes are great, but the most important sets of eyes is the legal professional one.
Yeah, and some issues are really important for an agent because some of it's lifestyle, like are they allowed to have pets? Are you showing, if your client's got pets, and are you showing them properties that says no pets allowed? Like you don't want to embarrass yourself as an agent, so you've got to be able to do some homework and figure out what these statutes say.
Absolutely. Podcast 15, David Korman convinces me why I need a will.
Yeah, I don't think that was that's hard to convince anybody. Like everybody should have a will, and we go into why and how simple the process is, and we're always encouraging everybody to get a will, and you're never going to make a will at any point in your life that's going to be perfect for the rest of your lifetime. So you have to make a will that will serve your needs and protect your family today if something happened to you, and if you have to change it down the road, then you change it. But I think we make a compelling argument that everybody should have a will. You're always better off with a will, with power of attorneys, than to not have them. And we explain why in this podcast.
Yeah. Podcast number 16, everything you need to know about title insurance.
Yeah, well, again, I would couple this podcast with a recent podcast that we did with Teresa from First Canadian Title. We had her on, I think, in the last month or so. And title insurance is part of every single transaction, residential transaction, and most commercial transactions as well. And it's just part of the way we close transactions, and there's certain protections afforded to buyers by having title insurance. So we go through that, and it's really important for any realtor to understand that. It's important for lawyers to understand what's covered, what's not covered, and how you go about doing this, and what searches are done and what searches are not done because we use title insurance.
Yeah, it's episode 56. So we actually had a rep from First Canadian Title.
Yeah.
From First Canadian Title. Extremely knowledgeable. She's been in the business for a really long time, and that was a great episode that Sabia Ali and you did. So podcast 16, and I would follow that up with podcast number 56. So podcast 17, 18, and 19 was everything you need to know about pre-construction real estate. And this was a very timely podcast as well, because pre-construction real estate was absolutely exploding. Everybody was investing in pre-construction real estate, and realtors as well as the public was asking a lot of great questions and demanding that our realtors know a lot more about that product. So lots of things to discuss, lots of things to unpack, but we could not fit that into one podcast. So we actually did 3 podcasts about everything you need to know about pre-construction real estate.
Yeah, I'm even surprised we got it in 3. There's so many issues. There's so many things we're looking for, and you have to know it as a lawyer. You have to know it from an agent's point of view. So anyways, I think we did a pretty good job covering the issues that we're looking for in dealing with those. So it's a great market to be in. Like, I know you've got agents that are doing nothing but pre-construction, and they're doing quite well with it, but you have to have a good understanding of it, know what the issues are and what you can negotiate and what you can't negotiate. And that's always a moving target too. Going to a builder today is very different than going to a builder a year ago. on a pre-construction contract. There's a lot of differences in what they'll accept and not accept. So an important one that we had to spread out into 3.
Yeah, and I think the most important topic there is make sure you get the builder's APS. You have a 10-day cooling period when you're purchasing a condominium. Make sure you get it reviewed by a lawyer. You know, you can be capping development charges, you can be capping education levies. There's a lot of things in that APS. It's a very lengthy document. It's prepared by the builder and the builder's solicitor and written completely and utterly in their favor. And it's monumentally important that you, as the co-op agent representing the purchaser, protect your clients and get that document reviewed. You have a 10-day cooling period, get it reviewed. If you're buying a freehold product from a builder, then ask for the APS before you sign it and get it reviewed by the lawyer before you actually sign the APS, or ask to put a condition in there on buyer solicitor review before you sign the contract.
Yeah, that's a great point, David, and a great reminder. If you're buying a brand new condominium, there's an automatic statutory 10-day cooling off period, which is the only cooling off period for any contract for real estate. Okay, it's only for new construction condominium. There's an automatic 10-day that a buyer can get out for any reason. They don't need that. It's not the good faith argument. It's not anything. They can just get out. Cold feet, they're allowed to get out. Okay, that's not applicable to new construction. That's not condominium. So don't make that mistake. Exactly what you said, David. Make sure you've got a condition in there upon lawyer review, or if they won't give you that, then try and get the agreement to the lawyer before you submit the offer.
Yeah, very important. Podcast number 20, buyer tips, how to win multiple offers in this market. And, this was extremely timely because there was a lot of frustration in the marketplace. This was recorded in November of 2021. Realtors were getting frustrated, buyers were getting frustrated. There are steps you can take to win multiple offers and give your buyers a better shot at winning. So great episode. And David, I mean, we're still seeing multiple offers in some markets today. In fact, I was talking to a client yesterday who was frustrated because he lost 5 offers in this market. And wanted to switch agents, and I convinced him to give us another shot. But and my message to him was, hey, listen, we're protecting you. We're in certain conditions, we're protecting you because the market is shifting so significantly. We don't want to expose you to risk. And ultimately, at the end of the conversation, he understood, and it worked out into a good conversation. But we're still seeing multiple offers even in this market, and there's steps you can take to give your clients an advantage. So I would encourage everybody to listen to this podcast. Lots of great information.
Yeah, and I think it's the goal of almost everybody that has a listing right now is to try and get multiple offers. And there's a lot of people have had properties on the market over the summer that just very little action, things were quiet, they couldn't get one offer. And then some part of the strategy, well, let's reduce the price by 50,000 and see what happens. But your goal, okay, let's reduce the price, but maybe we'll entice other people to come in. And if we get 2 people, not 10 people like the previous market, but maybe if you still get 2 people bidding, that might push your price back up. You might make up some of that difference. So it's all part of the strategies. And I think you came up with some fabulous points and the strategies about how you deal with it. So it's a different type of multi-offer market right now, but you're still going to get some of those. So please go back. There's some great advice, great tips in there from you, David.
Yeah, and I kind of took, I'm really good when I represented buyers. I was really good at winning multiple offers because I had a very unique strategy on how to win them. So I encourage everybody to really listen to that podcast. Lots of great information. Podcast 21, everything to know about home inspections with special guest Ray Zamet from House Masters.
Yeah, and this was an important podcast because I think Ray was the first guest that we had on, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And I think that helped bring our podcast to a new level. Instead of just you and I bantering, which is always fun anyways. But Ray's a great guy and a great home inspector. And he was a fabulous guest, and he really broke it down as to what they're looking at, why they're looking at it, what to expect from a home inspector and how important that is. So I thought that was one of our best podcasts.
I agree. I mean, we've had a key partner relationship with Ray in the office for over 18 years. It's something that we're very proud of. Ray is, one of the best home inspectors out there. He's phenomenal, great source of information. And, this was a very good podcast. I'm looking at the time. It was one of our longest podcasts too, but so much information to uncover. I would encourage everybody to go ahead and listen to it. Podcast 22, everything you need to know about real estate commissions and legal fees.
Yeah, I can't believe it took us 22 podcasts to talk about how we make money. But that was an important discussion too. Like, when is an agent entitled to a commission? When do you get paid? How do you get paid? And when are you not entitled to a commission? So that was a big part of the discussion. And also legal fees too, how we charge in our industry, what you should expect, what you should be telling your clients, about how that works as well. So, that's an important one for everybody to understand and know how that works too.
Yeah, we had an event at my company last night, and Jonathan Hakohen, your business partner, talked about this a little bit, and he gave me an analogy that I thought was extremely good. And he said to me, David, I have people come and ask me too much other legal fees, but it's kind of like if you have a quote for a Honda Civic, but you want a Lexus, and you go into the Lexus dealership and you give them the quote for the Honda Civic and you ask them to match it. He's like, we're way better than all these other law firms, and we charge a little bit more, but the quality of service you get is very different, and it's hard to for clients to form a basis of comparison. And it's no different with realtors. The level of service you get from one realtor might differ greatly from another realtor, and it's really important to be able to compare apples to apples, and only then can you compare the commissions and the legal fees charged.
Yeah, and I think in the current market that becomes even more apparent, because when transactions are just closing in the normal course, there's a lot of lawyers that can deal with that. It's what happens when your transaction goes off the rails a little bit, because that's when you really find out what your lawyer's about, or what your law firm that you've retained is about, how good their clerks are and how good the lawyers are and their experience, and how they help you navigate through those issues. So part of it is giving, a lawyer retainer. You hope everything just goes smoothly, but it's always, who do I want on my side if my buyer can't close all of a sudden, right? So
and I've had a personal issue. My parents sold a house in Barrie a couple weeks ago, and there were 3 delays in closing. And David, let me tell you, I was very thankful to have your firm representing them, because each time you guys negotiated a further deposit to be paid in. You guys negotiated for that deposit to be refundable if there's a further breach. You worked very closely, you communicated with the other lawyer, and it resulted in a successful closing, which was monumentally important. And, had that communication not been there, had we not worked very closely together with your office in that closing, that might have gone very differently.
yeah, look, whenever you go through your own transaction, we talked about this, I think, in podcast 2, when it's personal, when it's your transaction, you get emotionally involved on a different level than when you're just advising one of your own agents who has a situation, right?
Of course you do.
And you sort of learn stuff from that. Okay, no, I like, screw them. They're in default. I want to, hammer them. I want an amount that's penal, not just compensation, right? And then we have to, okay, yeah, we all do, but let's calm down a little bit and figure out what's realistic. How are we going to get this closed? because that's ultimately the best result for everybody. So, those are the challenges. Everybody's facing a lot of that in the current market. So discussions, from a year ago are more relevant in today's market.
Yeah, and the quality of representation makes a really big difference in this market. So, make sure the professional you're working with is the absolute best professional you can hire, because it makes a big difference at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Podcast 23, everything you need to know about mortgages, with special guest Elon Weintraub. Did I say his name correctly?
Yeah, Elon Weintraub, and Elon, is a really good mortgage specialist. I put him up there with anybody I've met throughout my career. He really understands the industry. He understands the options, and he's got a great way of communicating. And I thought he was great on the podcast. I've seen him in other settings, when he's doing webinars and things like that. He's really good in communication, and he's really good with his clients in communicating and explaining things and digging down and giving them what the real options are. So he's a great resource for anybody to draw on. Look him up, watch the podcast, and I think you'll agree with my assessment of Elon. He's fabulous.
He really is, yeah. And Elon really talked about this idea of understanding the client before recommending a mortgage product, which I thought was fabulous, because, he talked about this concept of, not only providing great information for the transaction that's at hand, but structuring a solution to really understand people's lives and their goals and their future ambitions, and how that solution for today will fit in with the bigger picture, which I thought was very important.
Yeah.
Podcast 24 and 25, meet Jonathan Hakohen and learn how Kormans approaches marketing and growth.
Yeah, and again, we couldn't do this all in 1 hour. We get Jonathan going on these things, and I think he likes doing, there's nothing he likes doing more than doing podcasts, I think. And this was the first time we had an opportunity to get him on, and we had a great discussion. There was just no chance of getting it done in an hour, and we try and keep these things to an hour, so we had to spread it over 2 hours and get his insight. And he's a great lawyer. He's a great partner of mine too, but he's a great, capable lawyer on the, understanding the law and getting deals done. But he's also always had an interest in market approaches and how you develop your business, and looking for the next thing all the time, the next technology, the next social media opportunity. So we had some great discussion in that, and my firm has benefited greatly over the years, since Jonathan joined us, brought us to next level, and every time we talk, it's like, okay, now what? Like, now there's always the next things, always looking for the next thing. Fabulous. So what he teaches us, you apply it to the legal profession, you provide it to your brokerage, you can provide it that knowledge or that enthusiasm to any business. So it's I think a very interesting couple episodes.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, we've had over a 30-year relationship with your firm, and the growth and the leaps and forward that we've saw after Jonathan joined your brokerage is astronomical. And I thought it was a great 2 episodes. And in fact, Jonathan loved recording the episodes so much that he actually started his own podcast, The Chosen Life, right after recording those 2 podcasts with us, which is great. Very different podcasts. He talks about lifestyle. He talks about how to invest in yourself and live your best life. And Jonathan's all about that as well. He trains. He invests a lot into himself. So a lot of really great guests and appearances, and a lot of really great information on podcasts as well. So if you guys have some time without leaving us, go check out some of his podcasts as well.
Yeah, and it's this podcast that you and I do has always been focused on real estate and the real estate industry. So we always, regardless of the topic or the discussion, that's part of what we're always talking about. And his is completely different. He's not talking about real estate. He's not talking about business from that point of view. He's talking about lifestyle and all the different guests that he has on. It's what's your chosen life? What's your best life? Why are you successful? Or what were your hardships coming up? Who did you learn from? How did you achieve this? It's all those type of discussions. What motivated you? So we've had, some elements of that type of discussion in ours, but his is completely focused on that. Like, what's your chosen life? So very interesting, series of podcasts and series and guests, and anybody can look it up on YouTube. And Kormans, by the way, has a YouTube channel that has all of the chosen life episodes plus all of the David and David podcasts on there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Podcast 26, best practices and APS pitfalls to avoid.
Yeah, and this is something, we did it back then I think in January of this year. We'll do it again in the near future because some of those things have shifted. But there's always certain best practices that'll apply regardless. And there's certain things that you can get yourself in trouble with, whether you're a buyer, a seller, an agent, or a lawyer, if you're not paying attention to some of these best practice tips. So, and we'll do it again. We have to circle back on it.
Yeah, one of the biggest ones that you and I talk about all the time is the title search date, right? And the fact that most realtors do not give enough time before closing to really properly search title. And sometimes that could delay closing and cause some issues for both the buyer and seller. So make sure you're paying attention to what date you put for title search dates.
Yeah, and there's also a different approach that lawyers have to that title search date. Like, we were recently asked to take over a transaction for a buyer because they were getting frustrated with the lawyer, the law firm, and this is like literally a week before, I think it was a week or two before closing, because they were discovering that what they didn't like is they weren't going to be meeting with a lawyer to sign documents. They're going to be meeting with the law clerks. That's what really got them uncomfortable and wanted to switch to our firm. So I said, okay, well, let's find out what they've done. Like, when's the requisite, the title search date? Have they already searched title? So they got in touch with the lawyer, and the lawyer said, no, we haven't searched title because title search doesn't have to be done until 2 weeks before closing. So we're waiting to do it. And I explained to the client, like, we don't do that in our office. We search title as soon as we get the agreement in, because if we do find a problem, we want to give the other lawyer as much time as possible to fix the problem so we can close on time. If you wait to do it, the last day, and you give it to them and it's 2 weeks before closing, they may not have time to fix it. So, I explained that to them. I said, boy, are we glad we switched to you, because he switched it over and we did a title search that day. And the other firm wouldn't have done it for another 2 weeks. So, I think that's an important thing that distinguishes our firm too. And I'm encouraging other lawyers to do the same thing. Like, if there's a problem on title, we want the problem fixed so we can close. Not so we just tell them there's a problem that you can't fix in time for closing, therefore we get out of the deal. Like, that's not what we're focused on.
Yeah, and then my office had a case very recently where an agent listed her own property, and she classified it as a commercial property because she got permission from the city to change the zoning. However, when they dug into the circumstances surrounding that zoning change, the parking did not meet the specifications, the building did not meet the specifications, and ultimately they found out on the requisition date that it cannot be done, and the use that the buyer wanted cannot continue. And that gave the buyer an out to be able to terminate the transaction. So that was very unfortunate in how that played out and how that was handled.
Yeah, and another thing, be careful as an agent when you're filling in that blank, then it says, in the present use can be lawfully continued. So it's got to be what the current use is. So if it's currently can use for residential, but you think there's an application made to convert it to commercial, then you've got to put that in your agreement. It's currently residential, and then you could put other information in that there's an opportunity to convert it to commercial if certain conditions are met, right? And if it was framed that way, the buyer wouldn't have an out in the transaction, but it wasn't framed that way.
Yeah, very interesting situations, and big lessons there to learn as well. And I always say this, when you have a complicated transaction, come see me, and more importantly, or in addition to that, have a lawyer review the agreement, right? Because these are really big legal issues that have big consequences. David, I don't know if you want to end it here. I mean, we're an hour in, which is our usual time. We still have many, many more episodes to review, so we could continue this conversation next time. But, we recorded episode number 60, and there's another 30-something episodes to review. So why don't we continue next time? I think we've given the viewers a lot of information to digest and a lot of great information to go back and review. So I encourage all of you guys to take a little bit of time and review the episodes. And next week, we're going to continue with the summary and a lot more amazing episodes to be reviewed as well.
Yeah, we got almost halfway or close to halfway through it. So we did pretty good. And I will just continue it next week. It's worth doing. And I look forward to it.
As do I.
I'll keep this around for next week.
Maybe you can share it with me, and I can partake in the
Send it
second
over to you.
podcast.
Okay.
Thanks everybody for joining us. Enjoy your week, and thanks for listening to the David and David on Real Estate podcast.
Thanks everybody.
All right, bye-bye.